Weight versus pressure in the golf swing. What do those two terms really mean? They often get used to describe the same thing, and yet they're very different words with very different meanings. The use of these words incorrectly in describing how the golf swing works can lead the average golfer like yourself down the road of frustration and poor performance. So to truly understand how you should be moving your weight and your pressure in the golf swing, we're going to discuss some ideas in today's video, and we're going to use the Y Golf pressure plate to help you understand the difference between weight and pressure. So first up, let's define the terms weight versus pressure. So weight you can think about as the mass, as your body mass. Your weight is 50-50 in the center. Your center of mass would be equally distributed in the middle of your body here. If I moved to the right, my mass and my weight would move with it in this direction. Equally, if I move towards the target, my mass or my weight would be forward. So think about weight as mass. Pressure is very different. Pressure is the force you're pushing through into the ground using your feet. So pressure is what you're doing with your feet. I could very easily push with my right foot, put a lot of pressure into the ground pushing, but my weight would be very much to the left. A good analogy for this is the sprinter on the starting blocks of the 100-meter race. They've got all of their weight forward, but they're pushing with 100% of their pressure back into the blocks. So now we know these are different things. Does it even matter? Well, perhaps not. Certainly for you watching this video, nothing really matters that much other than improving your ball striking and ultimately your golfing performance. You certainly don't need to know the intricacies of the weight versus pressure debate. But what can happen and what can be misunderstood is if you think there should be a pressure shift in the golf swing, which there typically is in a lot of good golf swings, you misinterpret that as a weight shift. You start to move around incorrectly and uncontrollably and massively affect the quality of your ball striking, your ability to control the low point. So today I'm going to clear up those differences, make sure that you're absolutely certain about what's important when it comes to shifting weight or shifting pressure. Here's the stark reality that we're dealing with. 99% of you watching this video aren't making a good enough job of controlling the contact on your golf ball, the strike, the low point. And to suggest that shifting and moving around a lot is going to help you to potentially add more speed to your swing, which is a debate in itself, is crazy to even consider that option when you can't make solid contact. Pushing your pressure around and spiking the ground reaction forces is all well and good if you're trying to maximize and compete in a long drive competition. But if you're trying to play golf and control your ball flight on the golf course and consistently strike the ball solidly, then moving around excessively is certainly to be avoided. And that's true of the best players in the world. I want to talk about how you're taught to play this game from the very first day that you pick the club up. And if you learn to chip the ball first, you are told pretty much categorically throughout the industry to put your weight on your front side. And the reason for that is to encourage the fact that you hit slightly down on the ball, you hit the ball first, you hit the ground second. Okay, you avoid the dreaded fat shot. You avoid the topping of the ball. Okay, you avoid all those mishits that bring you so much misery when you're out on the golf course. So you start out chipping with your weight forward because you want to make good contact, and typically that works. Pretty simple. Weight forward, good contact. And then as the swing lengthens and you start to hit the ball further, your stance widens a bit, we stand slightly further from the ball, and we're told to keep our weight forward. Now we're pitching, we still keep our weight forward. Why? Because we want to make good contact. I agree, 100%. Let's keep the weight forward, let's make good contact. But then for some reason, some abstract reason that I still haven't fully understood, we now want to hit the full shot, and now we don't start or keep our weight forward. We're told to start shifting it, start moving it around under the premise of creating more power, which, as I've already said, is so far down the list that add power to the stroke that it should be avoided until such time as you're an absolute expert at low point control. Now we're supposed to shift our weight. Why? Like I say, we think we're going to hit it further, but in doing so, as we start moving around, we completely negate the quality of our low point control. We overlook the most important fundamental, the very first fundamental of the game, which is contact, in a quest for more distance, what good is more distance or more speed if you can't make solid contact? So the golfer shifting around all of a sudden in an attempt to make a longer swing and hit the ball further is completely losing their ability to control the low point. And that's where you have to understand that shifting your weight around in the golf swing should be avoided at all costs. At GOLFTEC, we use 3D motion measurement to measure how the golfer is moving throughout the swing. Our optimotion system uses tour averages, the PGA Tour and LPGA Tour averages, to compare how you're moving against the best players in the world. And the best players demonstrate very little to zero sway or weight shift away in the backswing. That's categorically true, and you can see it if you watch enough videos in 2D. You will not see golfers of good ability shifting away from the target. They stay much more centered and then move more forward in the downswing. Here's my swing on optimotion, making a regular standard swing, my stock swing, where you'll see that my hips stay very much within their centered or original range of motion. There's no sway away from the target. And then they continue to move further forward in the downswing. And that's one thing that I think the teaching community fortunately does see eye to eye on. There's a consensus that everybody thinks we should be forward when we hit the ball. I haven't seen anybody, luckily, who's telling people to have their weight on their back foot when they hit the ball. If you know of someone, please let me know, because I'd like to have a chat with them. But seriously, everybody thinks you should be forward at impact. And so if there's a consensus that we should be forward at impact, you have to decide for yourself whether you think being forward at impact is easier to do by moving away and then forward again very quickly, or staying more centered or forward to allow us more time to get back and forward ahead of the ball to where we need to be at impact. This pressure plate training aid from Y-Golf is designed for you to stand on and hit balls, and it's got this curve at the bottom of it which allows you to move your pressure around. I probably don't use this training aid in exactly the way that it was designed to be used, but I see an enormous number of benefits in this product. There's some good features to it. I'm going to share some ideas with you now. As I stand on the board and keep it centered, you'll see that I'm able to move the board from side to side by pushing through my legs, changing the pressure or keeping my weight very centered. And the way that the designers of this product like to use it is to encourage a shift of pressure to the trail side in the backswing, allowing for a bigger transfer and push to the front side. And I'm not saying it can't be used like that, but I have a way that I prefer to use it, which is to certainly keep it very centered in the backswing. Make a backswing where you don't rock the training aid left or right, okay? We keep it very centered in the backswing and then use the initial movement in the downswing to push down and into the ground on the left-hand side. This would be a training drill straight from the Stack and Tilt book. The crush the can is from the top of the swing. Imagine that you're pushing down with that left foot and crushing a drinks can on the ground. That's the idea of the crushing the can concept. This would be very similar. Start with your weight. My weight's still slightly forwards. I've got my hips forward here. Make a backswing without pushing to the right. So again, if you're swaying or making that error, that would be highlighted by pushing too much into the ground. And then once you've got this stable, centered backswing, practice this early transition of pushing down, shifting the pressure to the left early in transition. Have a look at these pictures of some great ball strikers here. This is a nice shot of Mac O'Grady from the rear view, just in his early downswing. Look how much weight has shifted into that lead side in the early downswing. Equally, these images from above, we've got Arnold Palmer demonstrating a very centered hip turn in the backswing, and then an early weight and pressure shift to the left in transition, getting their weight forward. This is Jack Nicklaus demonstrating exactly the same thing. These guys are not outliers. These are some of the best players to ever play the game, demonstrating very centered turns in the backswing and then an early shift of pressure and weight to the left in the early downswing. So if you struggle with your weight transfer, your weight shift, if you're aware that you're someone who sways around and moves around too much, if you're someone who struggles to make consistent contact, you may want to consider getting one of these for yourself to practice with at home and at the driving range. There's some great benefits to this tool. I'm really keen on sharing some of these ideas with you. The first thing I would encourage you to do when you get one is to set it up and put your weight on the front side and just hit balls, keeping your weight forward. Those of you familiar with my channel will remember a recent video I did on the wrench drill, the wrench concept of having 100% of the weight forward throughout the swing, and the idea that this would promote better ball striking. The feedback I had on that video was incredible. In the number of people who said that their ball striking improved significantly and immediately. Those are two things that you might want to pay attention to. Significantly and immediately improved ball striking by having more weight forward. Start with the weight on the left, keep it on the left, and keep punching those balls out there to get that contact. And then, as mentioned in the wrench video, you can begin to even out or bring the weight slightly more towards the center if you're more comfortable with that. Stay centered in the backswing, and then learn to transition and get this initial push down into the ground. There's definitely some benefit to doing that. Some benefits to creating a little bit more speed, helping you to maintain some better tilting through the ball. So certainly a fan of centered in the backswing, moving left very, very early in the downswing, and this training aid can really teach you that feeling very quickly. Earlier I hit some shots on the mat using our optimotion system, and I did so keeping my weight on the front for the entirety of the swing, and then I did one where I let my weight and my pressure shift back in the backswing, a little bit like a lot of you are being told you need to do. I've measured it using our optimotion system that we have here at GOLFTEC. I'm going to show you the results. I think you'll find the results very, very interesting indeed. On the screen I've got two swings, one where I move my pressure back onto that trail side, and the other one where I kept it forward for the entirety of the swing. So the one on the left is the, let's call it the weight away swing, the shifting swing, and the one on the right is the front post swing, the wrench drill I would probably call it. And I've added, just for reference, a couple of little check marks on the hips there at setup, just showing you the movement in two dimensions, how the pelvis and the weight is moving around. So we're calling those 0-inch hip turns at setup. You'll notice that on the right hand picture I've pushed the board a little bit more down into the ground to start with. Okay, so I'm starting with more of my weight on the front for sure, and over here on the left I've got it a little bit more evenly balanced. If we take that to the top of the swing, you're going to see some interesting pieces here. So at GOLFTEC we're using the optimotion system to measure the movement here of the hip sway, the center of the pelvis, and you'll see on the left hand picture how I've now pushed my trail foot more into the ground, I've shifted, and my pelvis has moved away from the target a couple of inches according to the optimotion, and that falls well outside of the range of normal PGA Tour averages. That's too much, or that would be considered unusual for an expert player to do such a thing. On the right side you'll see that the hip sway has actually gone in the opposite direction. It's moved almost the same amount but towards the target this time. That falls under the blue color code, which would actually be considered slightly too much in the opposite direction, but being too close to the target in terms of your sways would typically be encouraging you to still hit the ball first and the ground second. So although you might argue that the one on the right is slightly extreme in the same way that the one on the left is, I would disagree with that. I think the benefits of being slightly too far forward with your weight far outweigh the negative aspects and the negative consequences of being too far away with your weight. And then in the downswing, what happens? Well, as I tried to do, I push very early into that left side there, that left foot, pushing down very, very early, and getting back to impact at a point where my hips have moved forward of where they started, and that's a good thing. But I wasn't able to move them far enough forwards to conform to where PGA Tour average would be with a hip sway at position 7, P7, the impact. On the right hand side, I'm already on that front foot, but I keep pushing more into the ground, my hips move more forwards, so when I make contact with the ball, I'm 1.5 inches further forwards. and now conforming to that green PGA Tour average. The point I'm really making here is that it's not about perfect numbers, it's about trends and typical patterns. Are you the sort of person that can get away with shifting 2 inches away or more on the backswing and being good enough, talented enough, athletic enough to move forwards enough, fast enough in the very short space of time you have in the downswing to make an effective and efficient impact position? Or do you think it's more prudent to think about the swing being more centered in the backswing and giving yourself a greater chance of having your weight far enough forward at impact, which, as we've already established, everybody agrees that you need to do? I hope that starts to clear up some of the confusion between weight and pressure, gives you some clarity on what to do, and starts to show you what's truly important, which is where your weight is throughout the swing. If you like the idea of the Y Golf pressure plate and you'd like to get your hands on one, there's a link down in the description, and there's a discount code Chini15 to get yourself 15% off if you use that at checkout. I'm going to put the link and the discount code down in the description. Go ahead and get yourself one if you'd like to work on your sways and how your weight and your pressure should move throughout the golf swing. Guys, if you enjoyed today's video and found it useful, please hit that like button. It really does help the video to be seen by more people. Get down into the comments and let me know what you think about the differences between weight and pressure. Was that new information for you, or are you having difficulty still grasping the differences between the two concepts? I'd love to hear your thoughts on weight versus pressure. And if you're now ready to explore the idea of keeping your weight more forward throughout the golf swing, you want to go and watch this video next. The wrench drill, which I've referenced a couple of times in today's video, talks about how you could hit the ball better than you ever imagined by keeping 100% of your weight forward. And if you're wondering whether it works with the driver or not, then you need to click on this video here, which explains exactly how it works with the driver.